all. I know you're out there. I know you are the inventors, the innovators, and the Imagineers of tomorrow. You're entrepreneurs, you're employers with all the responsibilities and the opportunities that that brings. But most importantly, and what I'm going to focus on today, you and your startups are creating tech's future. And so there is no better audience with whom to share MIT Technology Review's just released, hot off the presses, list of the breakthrough technologies of 2021. I'm going to share my thoughts on other forces outside of and alongside technology that are changing work and the way we work today. And I don't just mean the where and the when of work. I also include the what, or the very nature of what we do. I'm having some trouble sharing my screen, and I have some slides that I want to share with everyone. Here we go. I hope everyone can see that. So I'm going to talk about specific emerging technologies that will impact how we work. Some of these technologies are available today, and others are coming. So when I first sat down to write this talk at home a few weeks ago, I was very excited about the prospect of connecting with such a diverse, creative, and entrepreneurial group. I was all set to plunge into the subject of 2021's breakthrough technologies. And then I was really struck by a bolt of irony. Technology is really only the subtext of this conference. I mean, yes, it is clearly tech-enabled. We have high-speed internet. I have that on my home broadband. I have a hotspot on my windowsill in my office here. I've got Slack. God bless Slack. You name it, we all have it. But this moment is brought to you not by technology, of course, but by the coronavirus. And so perhaps the topic of this conversation should be how is the coronavirus changing the future of work? And it's not as though when all this is under control, or dare I dream, over, we will ever really go back to how we worked and interacted before. And so this was what I was thinking about in my home office. It was very cold outside. I'm in the Boston area. I had a full cup of coffee. I had a closed office door. My kids were in Zoom class. I had muted my Slack. And my pandemic dog, Casey, she's here in this image, she was asleep on the floor in her fluffy white pillow. I will say that the sentient beings who are living their best lives right now are the pandemic pets that think that we will never leave their sight. So thanks to the coronavirus, we have a whole new category, a new era really of technology. Distributed work is all most of us have. And if you experience the days when teleworking and flexible schedules were radical concepts, and the expected answer to a request to adopt them expected answer was, well, I need you in the office, then I think you're starting to really understand what's the impact of what's happened this past year. Breakthrough technologies are also transforming many aspects of our lives besides work. They're driving advances in AI, IT, medicine, biotech, energy, materials, to name just a few. This year is the 20th anniversary of MIT Technology Review's list of breakthrough technologies. Each year, the editorial team at MIT Technology Review chooses innovations that they see as game changers and that they believe will have staying power. Now, before I share this list with you, I want to provide a little bit of context so that you can understand where I'm coming from. MIT Technology Review was the very first tech magazine. It was set up in 1899. Today, we are a multi-platform media company owned by MIT, but fully independent. We publish in multiple digital formats every day, plus a print magazine, we have podcasts, we have events. We are firmly and enthusiastically pursuing growth to a general consumer audience, people who are interested in the future of our world and how technology is shaping it, but who aren't necessarily experts or aren't MIT alums or engineers or scientists. Our primary focus across all of our platforms is in answering this question: what is technology doing for people? So now I'm going to draw upon the exceptional efforts of my MIT Technology Review colleagues and share with you some stories that they have come up with about how emerging technologies are changing the world. They spotlight the innovations and discoveries that are coming out of the laboratories, universities, and the R&D centers around the world. First, I'm going to share the list itself, and then I'll provide a bit more depth and detail into the 3 breakthrough technologies that I think are most relevant to the future of work. Finally, I'll share some thoughts on leadership, because I know the real question for many of you in all this is how to lead your startups to thrive and grow. So here are MIT Technology Review's 10 breakthrough technologies for 2021. And don't worry, I'm going to go through these one at a time. First, messenger RNA vaccines. Messenger RNA, of course, is the technique behind the Moderna and Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines. These work by sending a message to our cells to teach a protein to trigger an immune response. In the future, beyond COVID-19, we expect these messenger RNA vaccines or messenger RNA mechanisms to be directed at a very large, broad array of diseases and to transform how we protect ourselves from illness. Just as a footnote here, of course, I don't need to remind you all, but we passed today, or in the last couple of days, the devastating milestone of 500,000 deaths from COVID in the US. The messenger RNA vaccines against it are about 90% effective. GPT-3. GPT-3 stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's a language prediction model that produces human-like text. It's developed by OpenAI, which is an AI research laboratory in San Francisco, and it's the company's 3rd-generation large computer model that learns natural language. Think Siri on steroids. AI is getting closer to interacting and understanding and interacting with humans. And I have to say, many teenagers don't even know how to do that. Data trusts. These are groups of users who join forces to control access to their data by companies and other entities. We expect to see a lot more of them. The idea behind data trusts is very much the same as that of a legal trust, when trustees look after their owners' financial assets. In a data trust, the assets are your data. The trust decides who can use your data and how. Pooled data could be used for a greater good, like medical research, and data trusts could work together to protect you and your data rights. Lithium metal batteries. Electric cars have a limited range today because of shortcomings in battery technology. Lithium metal is an approach by a company called QuantumScape, and this will boost the range of electric cars by as much as 80%. This is going to have enormous impact on the utility of electric vehicles. Definitely read more about this in our latest issue of MIT Technology Review magazine, because it's complicated. The technology is complicated. But essentially, the company claims that an electric car using its battery can go 450 miles on a single charge, and that's compared with about 250 miles today and at this point. Digital context. Many of you are probably familiar with the idea behind this. This is about tracking where people go, where they are, where they go, whom they interact with. And it's been used really well in certain places in this last year. But the technology really hasn't been ready for prime time, or it wasn't ready for prime time pre-pandemic. But despite, and maybe perhaps because of this, there's some important lessons that we believe have been learned that will give us real optimism about the opportunity that the technology has for combating the next stages of this pandemic, or indeed future health crises. Hyper-accurate positioning. Now, you guys know about GPS. It's proliferated, it's advanced, it's transformed and enabled industries and business models like Uber. And a much more precise and more accurate form is coming that will allow positioning down to the millimeter level. So we're currently at about the meter level, so a millimeter level of positioning. There's a couple of different competing technologies. We expect one of these to drive a huge array of new applications. It's really upped the positioning game. And this scene from The Office, everyone probably remembers, that's not going to make sense to future generations. Remote everything has transformed work, school, healthcare. Nothing's going to be the same. We already had the tools. Now COVID-19 gave us was the game changer, gave us the impetus. Globally, the pandemic forced schools in more than 170 countries to close. 1.6 billion children have stayed home. The US is grappling with how to optimize online learning, and Asia is really way ahead on this and has been for a while. In healthcare, the proportion of people using telemedicine has shot up from about 11% in 2019 to 46% in 2020. And we think that's going to grow and bring with it a lot of new business models. Now, in general, AI has become really, really skilled, even superhuman. It has been focused on advancing along the path towards one specific task, rather than a combination of different modes, like sensory and linguistic modes of human intelligence. This is changing with multi-skilled AI, and it's going to be transformative. You like TikTok? My daughters, I have tweens, they sure do. And the algorithm that the company developed has been a huge part of the reason why. The app's been downloaded 260 billion times and has 100 million users in the US. TikTok's For You page is what catapults users to fame. They use content captions, sounds, hashtags to determine what's for you. And of course, it attracts controversy at the same time, because what makes a video go viral can also be used on disinformation or racist or harassing videos. You know, really love it or hate it, it's flipped the script on who can get famous online. And I think we can all agree that this man here, he should probably be king.
Now here you go.
I'm so tired of watching it.
You want your freedom. Now here you
European companies are leading the way in green hydrogen. This would replace the natural gas, the diesel, and the gasoline used by most vehicles today. Green hydrogen costs about 3 times today more to produce than hydrogen from natural gas. And if costs can come down, it has the potential to become a core fuel for a decarbonized future. We expect that 3 of these 10 technologies that I went through will be the most transformative for the work of the future. The first of those is GPT-3, which I mentioned earlier. That's the language prediction model that works by synthesizing text it's found elsewhere on the internet, making it a kind of vast, eclectic scrapbook from millions of snippets of text found on the internet that it glues together in kind of weird ways. It can power better chatbots. It can help people code. It might also be used in less positive ways, like to power better disinformation or help kids cheat on their homework. When someone released a GPT-3 bot on Reddit, it interacted with hundreds of users before it was busted. By then, it had given some mental health advice. And it was decent advice, but even so. GPT is a huge leap forward, but it's still made by humans with all the flaws and limitations that implies. Multiskilled AI is a major step forward. It brings AI closer to human intelligence, enabling it to adapt to a changing world, combining sensory and linguistic modes to adjust to new situations. These can be ported into robots that can communicate with us and collaborate in our daily lives. It would be safer too. Algorithms that screen resumes wouldn't treat irrelevant characteristics like gender and race as signs of ability. And self-driving cars wouldn't lose their bearings on a snowy night or when it's dark. Multimodal AI systems could become the first AIs that we can really trust with our lives. And again, I mentioned remote everything. You all have lived this. It has transformed our lived experiences these past 10 or 11 months. It has created challenges for collaboration, for cooperation. It will redefine the office space when it's safe to be together again. And there's going to be implications for residential real estate too. Many workers aren't going to have to think about the commute. I think this is where we're going to feel the distributed part of distributed work. Remote everything will affect where humans live. It's going to affect transportation systems, business incentives, etc. I don't want to leave out, while talking about remote work and people being remote, there's also a lot of people who can't work remote. I think we have to remember those folks in these conversations. And I think as startup leaders, you all are in the fortunate position of being able to build businesses that take into account all employees, because you don't have to undo legacy issues. I will say that as a business leader, I've never spent more time than I've spent this past year thinking about my employees. The early priority in March was to get everyone home safe and secure, and then to think about the whole human, the whole person, and how folks who are managing families were managing it all on top of their work. And so when all this is over, I hope that our orientation towards supporting the whole employee will remain. This looks at kind of the big life forces here. We've got technology, we've got the coronavirus. We need to be thinking about how to care for our employees. We need to think about how, when, and whether to return to the office. But it's also a moment in thinking really seriously about real change in diversity, equity, and inclusion in our companies. This did not start with the pandemic. But at the same time, it's not hard to see that a lot of people lost more than others did, or they didn't have it as much in the first place. I think it's up to us to confront some uncomfortable and challenging situations and be leaders for change. So I would encourage all of you to think about leadership, not just in terms of cutting edge technology to build and grow your startups, but how you want your work to serve the greater good and society as a whole. And I think the idea of the greater good fell out of favor for a while, and I would encourage you all to bring it back and think about the businesses that you're bringing to life and how you can have an active role in that. Startups are incredibly exciting. You are the ones with the greatest potential to drive meaningful change. You're writing your story. It means you're brave, you're strategic, and you're creative. I really can't wait to see what you do, and I hope to read about all of it in a future issue of MIT Technology Review. So thank you all, and thank you for letting me be a part of the conference.